This is JSA TV, your virtual newsroom for telecom professionals. I'm Dean Perrine, and welcome to JSA TV. Today, we're recording a very special JSA TV, as it's our inaugural roundtable discussion. We're going to be discussing New York City, and specifically New York City as a digital city, which isn't something that anybody wants to listen to me talk about, which is why we have three distinguished panelists with us today. Those panelists are Mr. Michael Levy. Michael is the manager of global colocation product at CenturyLink. CenturyLink provides communications and data services to residential, business, governmental, and wholesale customers. We also have Mr. Jonathan Frye. Jonathan is the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Axiom Fiber Networks. Axiom provides telecommunications infrastructure services over its fiber network to carriers and enterprise customers in the greater New York City metropolitan region. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Philip Koblence. Phil is the Chief Operating Officer at NYI. NYI specializes in customized technology infrastructure solutions, offering customers mission-critical data services that help sustain and grow their businesses. Gentlemen, welcome to JSA TV.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Excellent, guys. We're gonna go ahead and jump right in. You know the drill. We're gonna be talking about the New York City specifically, and New York City as a digital city. So here we go. In 2015, how do we define what it takes to be a digital city? What are the key features of a thriving digital city? We'll start with you, Michael.
Sure. I think there are a couple of aspects. The first would be on the business-to-business side. You have strong ecosystems that allow communication between symbiotic companies. I think also you have fiber to the home, which is still developing in most cities. And then lastly, I think seeing digital components in every day, like in public transportation.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. How about you, Jonathan? What do you think?
Sure. We see it as the availability of access toward information and communication between, as Michael mentioned, between businesses as well as to the consumer, the home end consumer.
Excellent, excellent. And Phil?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're all right. The fact of the matter is, creating that ecosystem. You know, these companies need each other for services. So when you have a company like, you know, Axiom doing the work that they're doing, connecting all of these different buildings, and you have a company like ours that, you know, maintains data centers locally, so you don't have to have those businesses localize any of their infrastructure, and you know that connectivity is no longer an issue because you can really get, you know, high-speed connectivity back to the data center, so it really becomes kind of an extension of the business.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. And Phil, this question is, we're going to go ahead and start with you. What are the benefits of being a thriving digital city? You know, what industry sectors and or end users truly stand to benefit the most?
Look, I think the definition of a digital city typically speaks to that kind of, you know, tech startup mentality. So the fact of the matter is, I think New York, specifically because of the infrastructure that's just been laid here since day one of the internet, kind of thrives and has almost overtaken some of the other kind of Silicon Valley areas for a thriving market for companies in advertising technology, which is probably the fastest growing, you know, kind of division of startup, and that's starting to get to even segment within itself. But really, you know, a lot of the core industries that made up New York, the legal community is taking really good advantage and finally digitizing in a way that they would have otherwise not been able to. Schools, you know, you have a lot of these schools, whether they're at the university level or at the charter school level, especially in New York, as you have, you know, the growth of, you know, these wealthy communities in Brooklyn, and you have a lot of these private schools coming up. You know, they need connectivity, especially charter schools and whatnot, to communicate with each other, and it's just got to be a lot more nimble than it used to be. So, you know, it kind of spans all the industries.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, first and foremost in our view is the financial services vertical. You have the key matching engines and news feeds, which you see in data centers all across the New York and New Jersey market. So definitely that's the first that comes to mind. You're also seeing a growing media ecosystem. So not only is that the ability for content to transfer between the content providers and the MSOs, also to the consumer as well. And lastly, you have a thriving, what I would call X as a service ecosystem. So you have key service providers like us, New York Internet, more niche cloud providers that every business of every vertical can take advantage of. And they all happen to be here. The East Coast, the corridor between New York and Northern Virginia is the strongest data center ecosystem of the world. So every business benefits from that.
Jonathan?
Sure. I agree with both what Phil and Michael had just mentioned. So I say D, everybody benefits, whether it's financial services, government, education, healthcare, you name it, you pick it, everybody benefits. The key thing here, though, is it's connectivity. Can I get the connectivity where I want it, where I need it, at the specific data rates that are required to have the throughput? And in most cases, in certain geographies within New York City, the availability of that is there. But when you start moving outside of those core geographies, like Midtown Manhattan, as an example, the availability or access becomes a lot more challenging and a lot more costly. So it's incumbent upon us to continue to challenge the regulators, the government, the city government, to drive down costs, to allow us, builders like us, and providers like what Phil does and what Michael does, to enable their services for consumers outside those core markets. So you're not going to find financial up in Upper Manhattan. You'll find schools, the charter schools, as Phil had mentioned, the hospitals and so forth, and even the homeowner. We want to get those services out to those folks as well.
Excellent. Okay, so and Jonathan, we'll stick with you. How does New York City measure up? You know, what do we have? What needs to be done?
I think it's an A+ for sure. And again, but in particular markets, or particular geographies within the city, we benefit from a small piece of real estate with a lot going on. We're a very dense urban environment with many different types of industry, many different types of people. So I think we're certainly A+ amongst our peer cities.
Excellent. Phil, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we named the company New York Internet, so obviously I'm a little bit biased. I could do without the 1 degree days like today, but besides that, I mean, from an infrastructure standpoint, like Jonathan said, I mean, you can't compare the density of infrastructure in New York. And all you have to do is look at some of the, kind of crazy things that have happened to New York in the last 10 years. You start with 9/11, you go through Sandy and all that, and the resiliency of the infrastructure kind of speaks for itself. And the ability to use a lot of that infrastructure that was built, many years ago, certainly in internet time, and take advantage of that and kind of, keep upgrading it and making sure that you get the throughput, like Jonathan said, that you need, is important. But the bones being there is critical and is just incomparable with any other market.
Awesome. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, as Phil said, we sort of were destined to have the best infrastructure from day one when telecommunications began. We have buildings here that if you type in a website, there's a 30% chance it will go through that exact building. I think just as a New York City resident, there are certain things we don't have yet. You can't buy your subway fare through your phone. You can on some of our commuter rails, but I think that we should see more of that. Again, as I mentioned, fiber to the home, we're not going to be selected as a Google Fiber city. They're selecting tier 2 markets. That's a lot easier, and I can tell you from where I sit, we're building out fiber to the home, and it's very difficult. So I'm really hoping the ILEC here in New York reaches more neighborhoods, not just new buildings, but everyone in every neighborhood in New York City is able to take advantage of that high-speed internet.
Awesome. Michael, you're providing the best segue possible for our last question. What do we need to do next to further the progress of the New York City as a digital city?
Oh, great. I can take that. I actually think we have a rock star here. Phil has lots of engagement with the developer community. He introduced me to the digital Dumbo scene. I think that the private sector has to create these tech incubators. I think what's happening in Roosevelt Island, having the Cornell Tech campus, where we have used data centers as incubators, I think that's really going to bring us along. And I'd like to see tech more involved in everyday life. So these kiosks we now have in the subways that are interactive, that really helps. So I think that the everyday guy walking around needs to interface with technology a bit more.
Awesome. Jonathan, thoughts?
Sure. I think the city owes builders like us the opportunity to expand without being burdened with these enormous fees that are incumbent upon us. Michael mentioned before about the ILEC bringing fiber to the, just called fiber to the X, as we've heard, in many readings that we see. But effectively getting out to the outer boroughs and bringing high bandwidth services to the outer boroughs and having a selection of choice between providers. So in our opinion, our view, relative to what we do for a living, it's just that. It's the easing up the fees, so we can extend the infrastructure to enable folks like what Michael does for a living, what Phil does for a living, what others do, to bring those services to the businesses, to the schools, to the hospitals, to the legal firms, to the financial institutions, to the homeowner. There's thousands and thousands of homeowners within the New York community, and we need to bring those services to them.
Awesome. And Phil, you have the last word. Make it good.
I'll try. I'll do my best. Look, what Michael and Jonathan said is right. Obviously, you need to connect all of these buildings, and you need people on a day-to-day basis to get engaged with technology. I think in terms of New York City, the biggest complaint anybody has in order to do that is the fact that you can count on one hand the amount of subway stations where you can use a cell phone. I mean, it's just not. Most of the day spent in New York City for a lot of people take place underground in an area that's completely absent of connectivity. So that's probably the biggest thing that needs to happen, kind of getting the MTA on board and understanding that in order to bring New York City to that mountaintop, you need connectivity in the subways. Otherwise it's just it's fairly embarrassing to be blunt.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much for being with us here today. We appreciate it very much. We will be sure to continue this conversation and start many others at Telecom Exchange happening here in June 2015. With that, if you would like more about Telecom Exchange, you can go to www.thetelecomexchange.com for more information. And thanks for watching JSA TV. Happy networking.